so many music scenes in Ghostwood Song. So I wondered if you would talk a little bit about like the music that you listened to that you drew inspiration from. And also,
Yeah.
could you touch on like what a murder ballad is and the role
Sure.
that it
Yeah.
plays in your story?
Okay, so Shady is actually named after the song Shady Grove, which is an old Appalachian ballad that has been transformed into many, many songs. My personal favorite is by Doc Watson. And so so much of this story grew out of that song in particular, and of bluegrass in general. You know, and of Appalachian folk. So this book has a lot of bluegrass and a lot of folk, and it's sort of the beating heart of the book. It is the mundane magic of the book, I guess you would say, and it builds the atmosphere of the book. So it's hugely important to Ghostwood Song. So I listened to a lot of that kind of stuff growing up, but not like purposefully. It was just around me, you know, like my dad singing a song while he's driving, my grandpa, you know, puts a tape in the tape deck or whatever. And then I ended up moving to Nashville, you know, and then suddenly it's like Nashville is bluegrass central.
Yeah.
And I'd be going to bluegrass shows and I'd be like, wow, this feels so familiar. Like this feels like home. And so bluegrass for me became this way of kind of returning home a little bit, like returning to my roots, tapping into who I am as an artist. So I listen to a lot of bluegrass. Like I don't really have like favorite bluegrass musicians, because to me bluegrass is something that is best live, right? You go and it could be, I mean, the thing about bluegrass musicians is that you can just have, you know, a couple guys from a family, they start playing and they're amazing. They're like, they should be recording albums incredible, but they don't, because they're just a family of guys who play bluegrass.
Yes, I love
which
that.
is what I love about bluegrass. And so, you know, I'd be going to bluegrass shows, listening to a ton of Doc Watson, Gillian Welch, and anyway, so that's kind of where Ghostwood Song kind of grew out of. But one thing I became really fascinated with is murder ballads, which a murder ballad is a traditional ballad that details a murder, which could be a real murder that happened like historically, or it could be a fictional one. And it'll usually go through, and sometimes graphic detail, how the murder happens. And it almost always ends with the killer being punished for their crimes. So often being executed. Very occasionally, you'll get like a really cool ending where there's like a supernatural kind of revenge scenario, which is always just amazing. So the particular murder ballad that was really important for Ghostwood Song is the Twa Sisters, the two sisters, sometimes called Wind and Rain, about these two sisters who fall in love with the same man. And so one drowns the other, and the drowned sister's bones like wash up on a riverbank, and this guy finds them and shapes them into a fiddle. And so how cool is that, right? So that is the song that Shady is just playing over and over and over at the start of the book. She's obsessed with it. She can't stop playing it. And then she hears out of the woods a phantom fiddle played back to her. So murder ballads are this amazing traditional genre of music that is definitely like all wrapped up in Ghostwood Song. Yeah.
I love it. I love that so much. I'm also obsessed with murder ballads. There's just a teeny tiny one in Cattywampus. I think it's the song that Katy Bird is singing to Puppet to try to get it to calm down, like at the very beginning of the book. And I think that one was Pretty Polly. It was like a line from Pretty Polly. Yeah. But oh my gosh, I absolutely adored the theme of the Twa Sisters throughout the entire book. Like it just gave me, every time it was mentioned, it just started getting chill bumps. I love it.
Thanks. Yeah. I think music just kind of, I don't know, something about music and Southern books, they just go together.
Yes.
And your next book,
start
with a creepy song too?
It does, actually. It's a creepy song that her grandfather, I'm trying to think of how much I should tell before I revise this book. Yeah, it's a creepy song that her grandfather used to sing to her. That was basically like a Halloween song, and that one was not like an actual song. It's just one I made up in the the spirit of. Yeah, but that one also has ghosts, and it should be coming out sometime next fall. I'm really excited. That one has actually like a very, very young romance, I guess, like a very, the biggest thing they do is hold hands, but that's appropriate for middle grade. So it has a very young romance, and one of the characters is genderqueer, which I'm really excited about too. And it's also set in Howler's Holler, so I'm excited about that. It was a complete and total treat to get to, reprise the Hollow, and also to have a couple of characters pop in. I'm not gonna say which ones. That one's like a secret, but there's like a couple of little cameos in there, which I'm really excited about. And this one is definitely a little bit more goosebumpy than the first book, so I'm excited about it. Which leads me to, would you like to share a little bit about your upcoming novel, which I'm incredibly excited about, and I got to read a draft, and it's just amazing, you guys. It's so good.
I will very quickly, and then I think we're probably going to need to move on to Q&A. But yeah, so my next book is called The River Has Teeth. It's a dark contemporary fantasy that's coming out next July. So it is about, it's hard to even start, like, I'm not really like to the elevator pitch stage with it yet, but basically girls start going missing on this nature preserve, and one of the characters, her sister, goes missing, and she goes looking for help. And the other character, there's two narrators, thinks her mom might be responsible. And so it's kind of an enemies to lovers romance, and it's darker and more fast-paced than Ghostwood Song, but it's also set in the South and involves murder ballads.
Yes, it's delicious. You guys are gonna love it. I'm so excited. So should we do Q&A now?
Let's go ahead and do the Q&A, and thank you for a wonderful, very engaging, yes, applauses, wonderful, engaging discussion, and you're a great compliment to each other. You draw out a lot of fascinating and nuanced information from each other, and so it's a pleasure to listen to you. So I think that it's worth this is a comment, not a question. For what it's worth, Kay says, I loved Sarah, exclamation point. I thought she was supportive of Shady while also being one of the more reasonable characters who's aware of how absolutely insane everything they're doing is. My embellishment with that.
Thank you.
And I love Sarah too. Shout out. So, yay.
Love that.
I posed a question, and it's for the two of you. Could you please talk about your writing process? You mentioned Save the Cat and Story Genius, but what would a typical writing day look for each of you? And Erica, do you want to take that one first?
Sure, yeah. So a typical writing day, I guess it depends on where I'm at in the writing process. If I'm drafting is a little chaotic. I often will just draft for hours and hours and hours, and kind of obsessively, kind of just me at the keyboard, letting the story fly. If I'm in revision, it's more like work, like I sit at an actual desk at a desktop computer, and I am meticulous and careful, and kind of all of my like very organized self comes out. So it really does just depend on the task. What about you, Ash?
I think very similar. Like when I'm trying to brainstorm and come up with an initial idea or the outline, it's just sticky notes everywhere. Sticky notes, whiteboards. I write on the windows with Sharpies, sometimes not Sharpies, but dry erase. And then when it gets down to doing the actual writing, I have to be like, I have a lot of people in my house, so I have to be very boundaried with my time, or I have to cram the writing, the kind of shoehorn it into weird moments, like waiting in the car line. So I don't know, we just kind of make it work.
Is there anything as a kind of a follow-up for either of you? Is there a particular setting you need? Is there a ritual? Do you have any rituals that you can tell us about?
I mean, I treat writing as much as I can like a job. So I try not to be too precious about rituals or anything like that. But like I said, like if I'm drafting and I want it to feel fun and new, I'll work on my laptop, like in a chair on the couch. So that I'm kind of setting up this sort of like laid back feeling. Whereas if I'm doing something really like I'm revising, I'm working on copy edits, I sit at a desk with my desktop computer, I have my cup of tea, you know, and it's like I am at work for the day. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very similar. Like the tea is non-negotiable. I have to have tea or it doesn't happen. And also before I start a project, I always make a playlist with music that's kind of reflective of like where the story is from and also the emotional arc of the story. And then I play it in the same order every time. I don't put it on shuffle. And that gives me kind of like a Pavlovian response of, and now it's time to get into writing mode. So if I turn it on and listen to the first 2 songs, usually by the 3rd song, I'm ready to go. So brain hack, I guess.
That's amazing. That's really clever.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so Kayla asks, how different was writing The River Has Teeth than this current book for you, Erica?
Yeah, they actually were pretty different writing experiences, you know, like if only because the characters are so different. Like Shady is this very like sweet-hearted, you know, girl who's just like grieving for her dad and trying to work out her chaotic romance, you know, life. Whereas The River Has Teeth has 2 narrators, and they are both very prickly, pissed off girls. You know, they're just mad. And so, you know, writing Ghostwood Song was just, you know, me kind of tapping into my family history and the past and music. And writing The River Has Teeth was like just tapping into like pure rage. You know, all that stuff I've been shoving down, butter churn style. Yeah,
Nice. I love that.
Katya said, I loved both of these books so much and binge read them. Both made me cry. Thank you so much for writing them. Here's the question. What was the quirkiest thing that inspired an aspect of each of your books?
Yeah, so I would say, I don't know if this is quirky, but it's certainly weird. So there are a couple of banjos in my house, and I was home alone one day, completely home alone, and heard banjo music, which is not something you necessarily want to hear when you're home alone. And so like I creep down the stairs, you know, like what is happening? And the banjo music stopped. And so I started thinking like, well, why would a ghost be playing the banjo? What would they be trying to say? What would they want to do? And that inspired a lot of the plot of Ghostwood Song.
I love that. That's the best. I don't think anyone could ever top that book story. I love it so much. I think the most offbeat thing that inspired something in CATTYWAMPUS is the scene. Hopefully it's still in there. It's been a minute since I actually read through the final version because I'm working on a new project, but the scene where Tyler falls into the grease trap, that actually happened to me as a child. I fell into my great grandmother's grease trap. She lived in a very, very old house in North Alabama. And it smelled terrible. And it was so traumatic to me. I felt like I should immortalize the moment. So I just stuck it in the book. Yep.
Wow.
So I just want to let everybody know that we can go a little over, but no one's obligated to stay. If the authors are okay to finish, we have several questions, and then Katie will close us out. So if that's all right. So let's go ahead and question for the 2 of you. Any reader responses that surprised you? And that would be good or bad, but hopefully good. Then that's from Brian.
Yeah, I've been surprised by how many people think the book is set in Texas. I just continue to be puzzled by reviews that are like, this is a great story set in Texas. And I'm like, Florida, there are alligators. Maybe Texas has alligators. I don't know. The Texan. So that has continued to puzzle me. Yeah, do you have one, Ash?
I guess, yeah. I had to actually rewrite one of the scenes. A cow died in one of the scenes that I wrote, and my youngest kid was so angry at me. She actually refused to read the rest of the book until I fixed the cow. And so, yeah, the cow does not die. Spoilers, sorry guys, but yes, the cow lives. So, and they have my kid to thank for that. You're welcome, Bessie.
Thank you.
I think
Yeah.
this conversation has generated the most quotable lines. Like the cow lives. These things are, yeah, these are hilarious. So some people had to head out, but they said that they were so excited to get Ghostwood Song, and they're huge fans, and they want to thank you both for sharing. And another of the audience said, "This is fantastic, this conversation. Almost done with Ghostwood Songs and can't wait to start Catty. And thanks so much. There's just a lot of great thanks all around." I wanted to ask you both, kind of in wrapping it up, unless somebody else has some other questions. What are you reading right now? Is there a book, or maybe even, it doesn't have to be a book, poetry, or are you watching something that that you would recommend, or you're really enjoying or finding diverting for you?
Yeah, so I have read so many amazing debut novels this year. Like 2020, I just feel for all the authors coming out in a pandemic whose books are not getting the attention they deserve, because there are so many. So I would definitely love to highlight a couple of the 2020 debuts that I've read so far that have just been amazing. So one of them is a young adult sci-fi called The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow.
Yes.
It is,
Yes.
I'm not even a sci-fi fan, and I love this book. It is super inclusive, just warm and important, and so that's one I would hugely recommend. The Sound of Stars. Another one I have to shout out is The Silence of Bones by June Her, which is a young adult historical novel set in Korea, which was just amazing, just beautifully written, like nothing I'd read before. It's one that as soon as I finished reading it, I wanted to turn back to the first page and start it over, which rarely happens for the book. So that one was The Silence of Bones.
That's so cool. Like Erica said, there are so many books this year that I've read that are just magical and pure poetry. I usually have a large stack of books going in at any one time, so I'm gonna mention several. But one that I've really super loved this year is The Boy in the Red Dress by Kristen Lambert. And it's a story about a queer girl in a queer speakeasy who's trying to clear her friend for murder that he's been accused of, which it's fantastic. The whole thing is fantastic. Recommend it strongly. Another one that I loved so very much was Legendborn, and that's coming out, I think, sometime in the next couple of months by Tracy Dion. It's amazing.
I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, it's set in, I think, North Carolina also. And wow, she does such a good job of juggling multiple cultures, multiple magical systems, and making it interesting and not overly complex. It's super compelling. I can't say enough good things about it. It's very interesting. If you like Arthurian magic or lots of different kind of magic, it's fantastic. Also, let's see, I have a whole list here. I really loved A Friend Divided by Ernesto Cisneros, and also The Wolf of Cape Fen by Juliana Brandt. Those have been a couple of my favorite middle grades this year. They're both just so beautifully written, and the relationships are where it's at in both of those books. So I enjoy them. They're full of heart. Yeah. I'm very excited. One more. I'm very, very excited about Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. That one I'm super, super pumped about.
What was that one again, Ash? What was that title?
It's Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas.
All right.
And that one does a really good job of like creating a magical system from like several Latinx like traditions, and it's got ghosts and all kinds of wonderful things. So I'm so excited about it. So many good books this year, not enough time.
Great. I think I want to thank you both. Katie's going to close us out. So thank you again. I'll turn it over to Katie.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So I just want to do a quick thank you also to both authors, because as they were mentioning, 2020 has not been the best year to debut, and they both are debut. So if you can support them, please purchase your book from us. You can find it at www.malaprops.com. And also their book suggestions are excellent. I've read a couple of both of the ones they're talking about, and also have ARCs of Legend Board. I'm super stoked about that one. So please, if you can, definitely check out all the titles that they're recommending. And finally, the grease trap thing is genuine, having experienced that once myself. That cracked me up. So everybody, please give them a huge virtual round of applause. Thank you so much for attending our event this evening. We look forward. We have Fable coming up on September 2nd, I believe, with Adrienne Young, and a couple of other YA events if that's your jam. You'll probably see me again, doing my best to host if I can. And thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.